Hello, everybody. Wow, the summer's really going by quickly. Less than 90 days to hockey. That's crazy. That's crazy. It feels like this summer is just flying by. Welcome to the first episode of season 5 for the TML Domain podcast. Really thank you for tuning in, for always having tuned in. I'd like to start by just talking about our Facebook page. Uh, you know, I really just want to say how much I appreciate the amount of attention that we got there, and we grew by more than double in terms of subscribers. We're at 1.2K now, and it wasn't that high of a number before. So um, I just want to start by saying how much we appreciate the amount of attention we got there. People are really interacting, and the comments are flowing, and the conversations are great, and everyone's really positive, and there's no real trolling or negativity or stupid nonsense in terms of the comments. Nothing nasty is being said. Everyone's keeping it light, keeping it hockey, and the community that we've created on Facebook is amazing. I love everyone there, and I didn't think we'd grow as fast as we did last year. Very successful for us, so we rewarded the subscribers with a giveaway when we hit 1K, and one very lucky person got one of my pieces of signed memory. I just want to say thank you. Very successful last year, and I think it had to do a lot to do with the AI content that we were generating. We had a lot of fun with the images. We had a lot of fun with the milestones and the things the players were doing, and at one point I generated a picture of Ilya Samsonov making a crazy save in front of a stadium full of Toronto Maple Leaf fans inside Scotiabank, and he liked it so much that he actually grabbed that picture and posted it onto his Instagram and made it his profile pic, which was very cool. Shout out to Ilya Samsonov for doing that. I'm glad you liked it. Um, and we started right after the season started with the AI stuff, and I think it allows us as fans to have a lot of fun with things that we normally wouldn't be able to really kind of create with our imaginations. Instead of using these stock photos that are on internet all the time, just googling images of players in different formats, it really allows us to kind of get involved as fans and diehard fans, creating crazy content. If you haven't really looked into it, I suggest you go to our TML domain page on Facebook and check out that AI content. We posted a lot on Twitter as well, and especially on Twitter, we got involved with a lot of different accounts that are doing AI content for hockey and different teams and stuff like that. So it was a little bit of a back and forth. At times we were posting. I believe it was when the Leafs were playing the Anaheim Ducks. We had this big, strong polar bear walking away from like a log cabin, wearing a Leafs jersey with holding ducks in hand, like he just came back from hunting, and stuff like that is I think it really allowed us anyways as a group of fans on social media to really engage with other teams and other fan bases and kind of have fun with it. I know it got really fun in the playoffs when the Leafs were playing the Bruins, so um, definitely take a look if you haven't already. And yeah, it was pretty successful in terms of that. We're definitely going to try to make it bigger and better and create better content this year. But if you check out our website under the game recaps, you'll see some of the images that we created. And on that note, I just want to let everybody know that we have three done the tmldomain.com website. It's a little bit of a different look now. I'm going to give you guys a little preview. There it is. Okay, so we've changed the way it looks a little bit. It's a little bit of a cleaner layout, easier to find things. Um, there's a light and dark toggle. So if you like the lighter style, you can use that, or if you like the darker style, you can use that. And we've kind of changed the sections a little bit. Um, Leafs latest has your things that are going on with the Toronto Maple Leafs on a day-to-day basis. Rumor Central is exactly that. When we hear stuff and it's interesting and it's not just clickbait, we post under Rumor Central. So if you see right now, the stuff that's under there, we have the Ryan O'Reilly article where he advocated for a trade for Mitch Marner to the Nashville Predators. Reports of Chris Tanev being offered more money and things like that. The trade rumors involving Nick Robertson, and we have game recap. So here you can see some of the AI images that we created for the games. So yeah, I definitely urge you guys to check out the new look and feel of the website. Sure, you'll love it. And there's little features that we've added as well. Now, when you go to read an article on our website, let's just say the Leafs signed someone or the Leafs traded for someone, right in that article, you can hover over players' names or teams, and it'll give their up to date to the second cap situation. It'll give you player contract details. So right there in the article, if you see the Leafs have traded for somebody and it's a multiple player swap, you'll see that you'll be able to hover right in the article and hover over the player's name, and you get to see their contract status, what their AAV is, what their cap hit is, what their salary is, and you get a really quick idea instead of reading an article saying this player was traded for this player, and then having to go on Cap Friendly, rest in peace, or another website to look up the contract details to kind of make sense of the trade. Now on our site, that information is right in the article. So as you're reading it, when you hover over the player's name, you'll see their current contract status, how many years left, what their AAV, all that stuff. So it really, when you're reading the article, you get a really good idea um, as to what the ramifications of the trade is. So I think the best way to start off the first episode of season 5 in late July would be to kind of talk about the season that was and how things went for the Toronto Maple Leafs. Usually, despite minor injuries and things like that, Leafs have a pretty smooth regular season. They start the regular season, they get a bunch of points, they end the regular season, and they make the playoffs. This season was a little bit different in that the drama and just the craziness around the team was amplified, and it didn't have anything to do with contracts or contract status or anything like that, despite William Nylander playing in the last year of his contract and negotiating during the season. It didn't have anything to do with that necessarily, but it's just, that there's this contingent of fans in Toronto that say things like the regular season doesn't matter. And it's the same fans that freak out on a game to game, day to day, week to week, month to month basis throughout the regular season. And it's, oh my God, this guy's playing horrible in net. Oh my God, Ryan Morgan Riley got suspended. Or, Timothy Lilligren got a high ankle sprain, and then Mitch Marner got a high ankle sprain, and it's, oh my God, we're gonna miss the playoffs. And I mean, it was a weird season in that sense because I don't remember um I don't remember the last time it was that crazy during the regular season. Like there was a lot going on. At one point Wall was hurt, then Samsonov wasn't playing good, and Martin Jones had to come in net and save the season, and they had to call up Dennis Hildeby uh, from the Marlies, who is definitely not ready to play NHL games, but they had to call him up and he had to sit on the bench because we needed a backup in case Martin Jones got hurt. It was a crazy year in terms of just what was going uh, on a day to and that's really the reason why you can't say things like regular season doesn't matter because like it or not, everything in the NHL that matters is based on the regular season, right? There's a lot of guys in the Hall of Fame that never won anything in the playoffs but had amazing regular seasons. So like, whether it's Joel Thornton or Patrick Marleau or Jeremy Roenick, these guys never won a damn thing in the NHL. Never really accomplished anything huge in the playoffs. And yet these guys are going into the Hall of Fame and it's based on regular season stats, right? The Ted Lindsay is awarded to the player with the most points at the end of the season. No, that's the Art Ross. And the Maurice Rocket Richard is given to the player with the most goals at the end of the season, and the Vesna is voted on regular season numbers, and Norris is given out to the best defenseman in the regular season, and we determine players' greatness uh, by their ability to accumulate these awards based on regular seasons, based on great regular seasons, and we put him in the Hall of Fame for it. And so it's really difficult to say the regular season doesn't matter because everything other than the Stanley Cup and the Conn Smythe for a playoff MVP is based on regular season stats. So definitely regular season matters. You have to have a good regular season. You have to make the playoffs to be able to compete for the Stanley Cup. And you can't call yourself a contender if you can't make the playoffs on a regular basis. Like, if you made the playoffs two times in the last 10 years or three times in the last 10 years and you make it and you miss and you make it and you miss, that's not a contender. The Leafs have the longest playoff streak in hockey, along with the Boston Bruins, and those are teams are considered contenders. So it's just by definition, the regular season matters, and it matters a lot. And so, talking about the regular season, the Leafs went through a lot of drama. They didn't have a great defense. It wasn't very steady. Their goaltending wasn't steady. But despite all of that, what we always, what I hear fans talking about the most in this city is we want a team with heart, we want grit, we want determination, we want you guys to be able to um, push through a lot of the issues and still get results. And I feel like that's what the Leafs really did this season. Despite the goaltending problems and the weak defense and all the injuries and the suspension to Morgan Riley and the two high ankle sprains to Timothy Liljegren and Mitch Marner, the Leafs still accumulated 100 more than 100 points in the NHL, and that puts them in the top 10 in the NHL. And if you look that top 10, whether it's Vegas, Colorado, Boston, Edmonton, the New York Rangers, all that entire top 10 list is all of the contenders in the NHL today who will contend for a Stanley Cup on a regular basis. Everybody below that list, and it starts with the LA Kings and it goes down, not contenders, will not make the playoffs on a regular basis. especially teams like LA actually. Now that the West teams like Nashville extended UC Saros, got Marchessault, got Stamkos, Brady Shea, teams like that, and adding to players like Ryan O'Reilly and Luke Shen and Roman Yossi, like teams like that getting better are going to push down the mediocrity in the West. And the West is a really, really weak conference, right? Edmonton plays the LA Kings in the first round every single year. Despite how good or bad Edmonton is, they're always going to get Edmonton. I mean, Edmonton's always going to get LA, and LA is a very weak team. They can't score, they can't defend, and the goaltending is not that great. So I actually like, the fact that the Arizona Coyotes moved to Utah, and Utah is starting to spend money to add to the young guys that they have, the stable of young players that they have. And the West is going to get better, and it's going to improve competition because right now the West is really weak, and a bunch of teams. And I think this is really the case with a team like the Vegas Golden Knights. They really took advantage of a weak Western Conference to the point that, when the trade deadline comes around, they put their best players on LTIR. And from the trade deadline to the end of the season, Stone, whoever you want to name is on LTIR because they use the cap space to go out and acquire players. They still make the playoffs despite missing their best players. Like imagine the Leafs at the trade deadline put, Tavares and Marner on LTIR and just gained $22 million and went out and traded for a bunch of guys, and then still made the playoffs because they're just the competition in the East is lacking, but it's not. The East is way stronger. Like if you look at a team like the Edmonton Oilers, who have had to play LA in the first round 4 years in a row, like compare and contrast the Leafs, who let's just say Tampa is one of those teams that might trail off a little bit, but they probably won't because they're a good team. But let's just say they do. The Leafs will have to play one of the Florida Panthers or the Boston Bruins in the first round for probably the next decade. Like just compare and contrast, right? Like the road to the cup is different for every team, and it's definitely much easier in the West. But to say that you're not successful because you can't beat Florida or Boston in the first round every year is crazy because those are two cup contenders, and they're perennial cup contenders, and they're perennial playoff teams, and they're powerhouses. And then if somehow the Tampa Bay Lightning are able to turn things around and get up to the level of that they were at when they won the cups, that just adds another team to the Leafs' first round possibilities, right? It's either going to be Tampa, Florida, or Boston, and that's just ridiculous. Um, it would really take the Leafs winning their division and playing a wild card team to get out of that trap. And I don't see it happening just because it's the margin of error is so small in the Leafs division that you know if a key player gets injured or if you have a bad stretch, and it could be a small 5 to 10 game stretch where you don't get a lot of points and you're not producing results, the other guys are not going to slow down. Like Florida's not slowing down, the Bruins aren't slowing down, and the Tampa Bay Lightning aren't looking to slow down, even though their GM, who hasn't had to really do anything for the last couple of years, is having to actually make real decisions and do real work as a GM, and he's screwing it up every step of the way. He traded up almost a whole draft class for Jeannot, didn't pan out. Now they had to trade Jeannot and get rid of him for a second rounder. They completely messed up with Steven Stamkos. It's a little bit on him too. But at the end of the day, it is what it is. So the Leafs, in terms of being a good team, kind of checked all the boxes. They went through the drama. They went through the goaltending issues. They went through not having a great defense, and that defensive conversation, the Leafs defense, we're starting to see a trend with Tree Living now. And the good thing about Tree Living is, he came in very close to the draft last year in free agency and didn't really get a lot of time to assess the situation and see what players they have and how the team is built and how good they are, and kind of figure out how to allocate money and sign the kind of players that he wants. He wasn't able to do that. So he went into the draft, he went into free agency, and he had Matthews and he had Nylander to sign, and he got both of those done. And then at the trade deadline, we kind of got an idea of how he's going to operate. And he got Joel Edmondson, and he got Labushkin. And then prior to the season starting, he went and got William Lagesson and Simon Benoit, who turned out to be key contributors to the Toronto Maple Leafs throughout, this drama-filled season where injuries were all over the place, um, roster moves because of cap space were all over the place. It's I honestly, to me, it just looked like the Leafs were grinding through whatever problem they had, and then despite all that, Austin Matthews almost scored 70. William Nylander had like a career year. Um, you know, the players are doing extraordinary things in the face of drama and all this other stuff that's going on with the team. Goalies being sent, like, Ilya Samsonov being put on waivers, clearing waivers, going away for a week, resetting, coming back. I mean, it takes a lot of leadership in that room to kind of deal with what they had to do. Um, Take guys out of the locker room, acclimate them back into the locker room, and then have them play well and play at a high level. I mean, Ilya Samsonov, despite all of his troubles, he's the only guy that's won a series in Toronto in the last 20 years. I mean, down the stretch, he went 18-4, and he had a 915 save percentage and a 243 goals against. I mean, those are very elite numbers. Considering the amount of pressure that was on the teams, like at that point when he came back, the Leafs were still at a point where if they struggled further, they could have almost missed the playoffs. Like the way Tampa struggled and fell down the standings, the Leafs could have done the same thing, but they didn't. Ilya Samsonov stood up. He played great for 22 games, 915, 243. I mean, like, wow. I understand that the guy struggled, and for sure, it's one of the reasons why the Leafs didn't sign him back. I'm not saying that he's a great goalie, but the fact that the leadership team was able to take these guys out of the locker room, continue to play and get results and points, and then all of a sudden put these guys back in the locker room, still continue to get points and get results. I mean, like Matt Matthews, I don't know. I can't count how many hat tricks he had last year. On the way to 70 goals, uh, William Nylander for the first half of the year was in God mode. Um, we really got to see certain things, but it's not always a bad thing because the injuries allow you to find players. Like who knew Simon Benoit and Jake McCabe were going to have that kind of chemistry? They were going to play that well together. Turned out to be a great pairing. And we found out William Lagesson was good. We found out that McCann can score, and Nyes had a better role. Well, we did find out that even though we couldn't, clearly going into the offseason, we'll talk about that, but there are some guys that struggled the first half of that season. Domi, Bertuzzi, Nyes. Um, Marner struggled for parts of the season. Like, despite all that, the Leafs accumulated 100 points in the NHL. We're a top 10 team with the rest of the cup contenders: the Dallas Stars, the Colorado Avalanches, the Boston Bruins, the Florida Panthers. Like, the Leafs were there and they went through it all. And that's it's one of those things where like they kind of checked off all the boxes. They went through the drama, they dealt with the media, they dealt with the injuries, the suspensions, all this crazy stuff that was going on, and they were producing at a high level, at such a high level that Matthews is still setting records despite all that. That to me is leadership. That to me is showing, despite all the stuff that's going on, it's not going to phase me. I'm going to push through it. And not only am I going to push through it, I'm going to score almost 70 goals. I'm going to produce Mario Lemieux like stats. And I'm going to drag this team to results. And he did that in the playoffs too. In game 2, Matthews won that game all by himself. 3 points, a goal, and 2 assists. Legendary status. So, in general, the season didn't provide the results that we want. Obviously, the playoffs didn't end the way that we want. But, the Leafs went toe to toe with the Boston Bruins, and they weren't lacking. It was one bounce in game 7 in overtime, and that was the difference. Ilya Samsonov only let in one goal that whole game in regulation in that game. He was good. His save percentage was great that game. The Leafs defense played well. But again, it comes down to offense, and we're going to definitely talk about the offense in playoffs. When talking about the playoffs, it's and this conversation about the playoffs is definitely going to go on to talking about free agency because it really works hand in hand for me. So, and I'm not picking on one player, even though it's going to sound that way. But here's the thing: the Leafs are made up of many components. There's a goaltender, there's the defense, there's your core four up top, Morgan Riley, all these parts. So in the regular season, the Leafs forwards, and if you look up the stats, Austin Matthews and Mitch Marner lead the league in takeaways. So it's not like they don't play defense or they don't play defense in the regular season, because they do. But in the regular season, it's a little bit more offensive minded and less defensive minded. Even though they both kill penalties and they have a crazy amount of takeaways, they're more offensive minded. And so the Leafs develop this identity in terms of how they create offense, how they produce offense, and what the key cogs in that offense is. And Mitch Marner is a key cog in that offense. He is a speedy winger that has crazy playmaking abilities. The problem becomes in the playoffs, the things that Mitch Marner does to be effective in the regular season no longer work. So you go into the playoffs, you get less time and space on the ice, and the plays that you're making in the regular season, because everyone is so heightened defensively and worried about gaps and positioning and stick positioning and things like that, the same plays that work in the regular season don't work in the playoffs. And so the Leafs lose a key cog in the overall machine, a big part of their offense. And Mitch Marner is a big part of the Leafs offense. And it's not that he's a bad player. He's actually a really amazing player, and his stats speak for themselves. So the problem becomes when you go into the playoffs, you lose a key cog who cannot execute the same way as he does in the regular season in the playoffs. And because you lose that cog, all of a sudden you're forced to figure it out on the fly. Now, Sheldon Keefe is not a good enough coach to figure it out on the fly. You know, Sheldon Keefe, I mean, his downfall was simply this. He had half of the season where Bertuzzi and Domi were ineffective. Later on in the season, due to injuries, you put Domi and Bertuzzi on the top line, and boom. Both guys started racking up goals and points. Matthews looked good. All of a sudden, Marner and Nylander got pushed down further in the lineup. And then all of a sudden, bingo, bango, bongo, your offense got that much better. You got that much deeper, and you got that much more potent. Which is really what carried the Leafs to this, incredible 18-4 record to close out the season. But why does it take you that long to figure it out? Like Sheldon Keefe is the only guy who coached the team for 5 years, goes into the playoffs, and when you ask him what his opening night roster is, he's like, I don't know if Marner should be playing with Matthews or Tavares. How do you not know that after 5 years? It's ridiculous that a coach can coach these guys for a certain amount of time and not know what his optimal lineup is. It blows my mind that Sheldon Keefe couldn't figure that out. And thank God for Craig Berube. Based on just the things that I've read about him and the things that I've heard about him from his players, what he did in St. Louis in that year where they were at the bottom of the NHL, they were not hitting their potential, they weren't getting the results. All of a sudden, Jordan Binnington comes up, gives you a little bit better goaltending, and then everybody has a role. No one's playing, like these crazy minutes where like an Edmonton, as soon as shit hits the fan, McDavid and Draisaitl are together and they're playing 25 minutes a night. And Craig Berube doesn't coach like that. He has a structure, he has a role for everybody, which I think is great for guys like Nyes, McMahon, Nicky Robertson, Pontus Holberg, Connor Dewar. I think these guys need roles and they need minutes and they need a coach with the confidence that can roll 4 lines and expect everyone to do their job. You're not always going to have a great game every night. But in general, I think the issues that have been plaguing the Leafs in the playoffs can easily be solved. It's not like they're a bad team. They are producing goals. Literally, they went toe to toe with Boston, and it came down to 1 goal. 1 goal, game 7 in overtime. So it's not like Boston was generating this crazy amount of offense that the Leafs were generating. It was the same thing, right? Both teams were great. Both teams had good goaltending. Both teams had guys on the ice that can score a lot of goals. Pasternak, Marchand on the Boston side. And literally it came down to 1 goal in game 7 in overtime, right? So to say that the Leafs were outplayed or unmatched or blah, 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 it's simply not true. And the numbers are there. There were nights where the Leafs made Jeremy Swayman look bad. Shout out to Willie Nylander for making Jeremy Swayman look average. He missed the first 3 games, and then he hit game 4, and he made Jeremy Swayman look average. He dangled the hell out of him. And, that's a caveat that has to be mentioned. You don't want to make excuses for the guys, but Matthews and Nylander were hurt in the most important time of the year, and the Leafs definitely missed those guys. William Nylander for the first 3 games and Austin Matthews for the games that he missed. So, could they have beaten Boston if they were completely healthy? 100%. But that's not what transpired. So we got to talk about what actually happened. And the Leafs fell short. And like I said, there's a key piece of their offense that disappears, and his name is Mitch Marner. Mitch Marner needs to be replaced with a guy who makes less money and is more consistent, right? You don't need a $10 or an $11 million player. If you look at guys like Jonathan Marchessault, Tyler Toffoli, there are certain guys that have made a name for themselves in the playoffs who are $4 or $5 million players that could easily replace Mitch Marner that are high quality top 6 wingers, right? It doesn't necessarily have to be Mitch Marner. the Leafs don't need his playmaking, right? We saw it on display when Marner wasn't playing with Matthews. He was playing with Nylander and still producing. Then he played with Bertuzzi and Domi, who are much lesser players than Marner, and still Matthews produced at a record pace. So literally, it comes down to the quality of Austin Matthews, and he is by far the best goal scorer in the NHL today. He is not going to slow down. He's going to keep scoring goals in the 50s and 60s, and he's probably going to be the best American goal scorer, if not best goal scorer, you know, to ever play the game. He's already scoring at a higher goals per game pace than Ovechkin through this much of his career. If he plays as long as Ovechkin has, and keeps up these totals like we all expect, Ovechkin's going to be yesterday's news. So I think that's the key in the playoffs. So the key in the playoff becomes Mitch Marner disappears. He's a key cog in the offense. The Leafs have to figure it out on the fly. They can't. It affects their power play. It affects their offensive production. And two, the Leafs forwards are told to focus more on the defensive aspect of the game in the playoffs than they do in the regular season, and that takes away from their offense a little bit. Even that they score key goals at key times. Tavares has done it, Nylander has done it, Matthews has done it. They're scoring key goals at key times, but they're not producing the same amount of offense because they're worried about defense a little bit more. And I think this is where Tree Living comes in, and the narrative is the Leafs don't give up a lot of goals in the playoffs. So defense isn't a problem, goaltending isn't a problem. And to a certain extent, that's correct, but it's not entirely correct. So to me, the philosophy that Tree Living is using today um, is indirectly going to influence the offense in the playoffs, and I'll tell you exactly what I mean by it. Because the Leafs are forced to think a little bit more defensive in the playoffs. If you build a defense core that is more reliable, guys like a guy like a Chris Tanev is not going to come to the Leafs and try to be something he's not, or try to do more than he's capable of. He's going to play his game. He is a veteran to the core. He's a stay-at-home D-man. He's going to block shots. He's going to do his thing, and he's a big body guy. He's going to push people around. And once you have more confidence in your defense, the way Edmonton got their confidence from a guy like Matthias Ekholm, you know, all of a sudden he showed up and the Edmonton Oilers went to a different confidence level because they had a guy who took charge on the back end. And I think Chris Tanev and OEL, even though they're not superstar defensemen or Norris caliber, what you're looking for is to build six guys. So like right now, the tandem is pretty much you have Riley playing with Tanev, you have OEL and Liljegren playing together, and then you have Simon Benoit and McCabe rounding up top six. Now, if Yanni Hakanpää is healthy and he's ready to play, I think it's going to be McCabe on the left, Hakanpää on the right in that third pairing. But you quickly shift to the Leafs having an elite shutdown pair, whether it's Chris Tanev and McCabe on the left, Tanev on the right. And then you have OEL with Hakanpää. All of a sudden, the Leafs become very stable in terms of defense because it's not just these guys. I mean, Tree Living has really built some um, depth to the Leafs defense that wasn't there at all. So right now the Leafs are Riley Tanev, OEL Liljegren, Benoit, and McCabe. You have uh, guys like Lagesson, Hakanpää. You have Connor Timmins. You have Cade Weber. All of a sudden, the Leafs went from not having a defense in general, just kind of uh, grabbing pieces and just sticking it together and just duct taping it together to create a defense. The Leafs have all of a sudden gone from having a makeshift defense to being 8 to 10 D men deep, and they know that's what it takes in the playoffs. Is you might need Connor Timmins to play 8 minutes in Game 6 because of injury. Someone is banged up. Hakanpää is eventually going to play. I mean, he did have arthroscopic surgery on his knee, but you have to look at the reasoning behind the signing, right? Hakanpää is a guy who played 18 minutes a night on a cup contending team in Dallas and a very good defensive team in Dallas. 18 minutes a night. And I know, like, Dallas is one of those teams that I like a lot, just because of the way they're constructed and they're fun to watch. And I like Ottinger a lot. So every single time I watched the games, all I heard was this guy's name, Hakanpää, Hakanpää. Like it, it it's like he came out of nowhere. He's this big, huge giant of a man, pushing people around, playing defense, blocking shots. And when he got hurt, he was so important to replace him. They had to go trade for Chris Tanev to replace his minutes, playing 18, averaging 18 minutes a night. And the Leafs went and got both. So that to me is sound decision making. The Leafs went and saw this guy playing averaging 18 minutes a night in Dallas on a cup contender. He got injured. They brought in Chris Tanev and they didn't miss a beat. And the Leafs said, I need both. And they went and got both. Now, whether he starts the season on LTIR, if he's ready, if he's not ready, if he's healthy, if he's not healthy, either way, he's a third pairing, 5 or 6 D man, and they can do without Hakanpää for a little bit, and then once he gets back, it'll be great. But building a defense like that, being more reliable, opens up guys like Tavares, Nylander, Matthews, Marner, and Riley to think more offense, to play more offensive, to open it up a little bit the way the Edmonton Oilers do, and then that's where the offense, I think, will click. Not having to worry about being the first man back. You're the center. You got to skate back. You got to back check. You got to make sure you break up the play. I think the Leafs forwards need to be opened up, have to be freed in that sense. You see it in Edmonton since Ekholm showed up. Their goaltending is not great. Their defensive pairs are not amazing. It's Cody Ceci. We all saw Cody Ceci in Toronto. The guy was atrocious. But all of a sudden, you push him down the lineup, and then you bring in someone like Ekholm, who's taking charge. He's talking to guys. He's yelling to the players on the ice from the bench. When he's on the ice, he's talking to the players on the ice. He's really taking control of that defense, and he's bringing his veteran leadership, and it's directly translating to better defensive play. And just overall, I think Berube's going to be much more structured. Everyone's going to have a role. Everyone's going to know where they need to be. With Sheldon Keefe, things got a little scrambly at times. Players were out of position, not knowing where to be. So I think overall, what they did in free agency was great. I'm not worried about losing Tyler Bertuzzi at all. The guy couldn't keep the puck on his stick for most of the season. Always, he's not a puck possession guy. he gets it, he dumps it in, and then he goes and chasing for it, and he's just like a chicken with his head cut off. You know, you know, he can't skate with it. He can't make plays. The puck never stays on his stick, and if you're not feeding him gifts in front of the net, he's not doing a lot of work. 20 goal guy. He didn't need to get overpaid in Toronto. You know, Nick Foligno called him up and said, "Hey, it's a pretty sweet situation in Chicago," and then he got his 5.5. I was more interested in keeping Domi, not so much Bertuzzi. It would have been nice if Bertuzzi stayed for 5 or a little bit less, just because if you needed a guy to muck it up a little bit, he was the kind of guy on the ice that would get into people's faces and push people. But the Leafs don't have to worry about that because guess what? Ryan Reeves will punch you in the face. McCabe will punch you in the face. Simon Benoit will punch you in the face. Chris Tanev will punch you in the face. and Connor Dewar will punch you in the face. You know what I'm saying? At the end of the day, the Leafs don't lack grit at all. The Leafs all of a sudden are going with a defense to start the season where Chris Tanev is a big hulking human being. Akinpaw is a big hulking human being. McCabe is a tough guy. Benoit is a tough guy. OEL is not a small defenseman. He's got a pretty good reach and pretty good size. He can skate and he can move the play. And other than Riley and Liljegren, probably, who are not very strong and you have to use their skating to get out of trouble. Um, and our puck are really are going to be tasked with just getting the puck out of the zone, getting it to the forwards a lot faster, creating more off the rush offense than the Leafs did this season. You know, you don't need to overpay, or you don't necessarily need to pay Bertuzzi, but I think 5.5 is overpaying him based on the first half of his season, which was very lackluster, and then he needed to play with a $13 million forward in Austin Matthews to get any sort of results. So if that wasn't going to happen for him this year, and he's going to play second or third line minutes, he wasn't going to produce anything, and 5.5 was too much. He's going to get destroyed in Toronto. So I'm not worried about the offense. Um, the offense is going to be there. The Leafs are going to score a lot. They scored the second most amount of goals in the NHL this year, and we all saw it on display. It was crazy. Nylander, Matthews, two-prong attack that even in the playoffs the Boston Bruins couldn't handle. The Boston Bruins for the first 3 games had it easy because Nylander wasn't on the ice. But even though that was the case, Austin Matthews said, "Hold my beer," and he grabbed the puck out of midair, went in on Linus Allmark, and absolutely deked him out of his jock. I mean, they had to send out, you know, I don't know who they had to send out to find his jock strap because it wasn't in the stadium. Ooh, god damn, that was a half. Backhand, oh my god. I still remember I was in my man cave. My buddies are over. We're watching the game. And as soon as Austin Matthews did this to his backhand, I'm like, oh my God. He's going to deke this guy straight out of his jockstrap and his pads. And Allmark looked stupid. Tell me why Linus Allmark didn't want to come to Toronto? Because he couldn't be in the same locker room with Austin Matthews because Austin Matthews was going to destroy him. He couldn't look Austin Matthews in the eye anymore after that. Tell me, I don't want to play in Toronto because the media is going to be rough on my family. He went to Ottawa instead. Like, their fans are rabid. Linus Omar couldn't come to Toronto, didn't waive his no trade clause because he couldn't be in the same dressing room and look Austin Matthews in the eye. Because anytime they'd be ribbing each other or talking shit in the dressing room, Matthews would just look at in this arm market could be like, really, bro? Bruh, really? Imagine first day in the dressing room, Allmark walks in as a Toronto Maple Leaf, and Matthews goes, the guy would flinch and drop his bag. Enough of the stupid. Yeah, it's so in general, the off season wasn't bad. Free agency wasn't bad. I'm not going to talk too much about the draft just because it's drafting kids at this age takes a lot of time. I know that Easton Cowan looks like is the Leafs' top prospect right now, and he's rapidly rising up the charts. But I don't think he's going to make the Leafs this year. And as a contending team, I don't think you can have a player that young, um, playing third or fourth line minutes. It doesn't make any sense. Um, to have a player that talented, playing down in the lineup and forcing him to play defense and check and hit. He's not a big player. It doesn't make any sense. I don't think this is the year. I think if the Leafs go into the off season, which I think is gonna happen, and Mitch Marner is gonna play out his contract and leave, and Tavares is gonna maybe sign back for a lesser amount. I think the chances of Tavares staying and signing for a lesser amount is around 80%. Mitch Marner's gone. I don't see him as a Maple Leaf long term. I don't think the Leafs have the money or the cap space or the want to pay him $12+ million long term. He won't sign 8 years, which is the reason why. If he was willing to go 8 years, the Leafs probably would have figured out an extension for him. But because he doesn't want to go 8 years, it completely eliminates him from signing an extension in Toronto. And to be honest, I think the Leafs covet the cap space more than they covet the player. Um, you know, think about it like this: the Leafs are going to go into the offseason. They have Riley, Tanev, OEL, Liljegren, Benoit, and McKay. All six defensemen are signed. And then all of a sudden, $22 million comes off the cap in Tavares and Marner. Guess what? $22 million in cap space with your entire defense core signed, and then all of a sudden, Leon Draisaitl is a free agent. Connor McDavid is entering the last year of his contract. What if Leon says, I don't want to sign in Toronto? I mean, in Edmonton, and tests free agency. And what if that irks Connor McDavid? And Connor McDavid says, maybe I don't want to play here. Maybe I want to go to Toronto. And then that's when the Leafs, you know, go all in. We'll give you Mitch, Easton Cowan, Fraser Minton, and one of our goalie prospects, and we'll take Connor McDavid. They got $22 million in cap space, and they got Woll, Stoller signed, and their entire defense is signed, and they got $22 million in cap space. That to me is a real possibility. The Leafs going into the offseason with $22 million in cap space and both goalies signed and all six defense signed is a huge sign. It's literally tree living at the draft with a huge sign with all the agents there saying, we have a $22 million check. Who wants it? That's what I think is going to happen, to be honest with you. I think the Leafs covet the cap space more than they covet the player. And it's unfortunate for Mitch, who doesn't want to go 8 years. And I think he's gonna leave the Leafs He's not going to get traded. He's going to play out his contract. He's going to be hated by the fan base for leaving for nothing, and not signing an extension, not going 8 years, and he's going to be hated and he's going to be booed every single time he comes back to Toronto. Unfortunately, it's a shitty situation. It's lose lose, right? He can control the situation by picking a team and saying I want to get traded there, but in playing out the contract, it's lose lose for him. This whole thing about, oh, I want to be a Toronto Maple Leaf and I want to respect my obligations. I signed a contract and I want to play it out is not good. Nobody believes you. What you're doing is you're walking yourself to free agency and you're either forcing the Leafs to overpay and keep you or to lose you for nothing. And that's a lose-lose. Whether you sign the contract for 12 times 8 or whether you walk for nothing, it's a lose-lose situation for Mitch. And it's unfortunate. But the Leafs going to be all right. Like I said, the goalies are signed, the defense is signed, and they got $22 million in cap space. You don't think they're going to go sign the next Gensel, or they're going to sign Draisaitl, or they're going to trade, they're going to try to get McDavid, or they're going to do something. There's going to be some high-end free agents that are going to hit free agency, and they're going to have $22 million to go out and sign two. There could be two $7 million players, there could be two $6 million players, there could be two $8 million players, there could be two $9 million players, and you still have money left over. The Leafs are going to add high-end offense once John Tavares and Mitch Marner come off the books. If John Tavares does the thing that I think he's going to do and sign for $5 or $6 million for 2 or 3 years, 4 probably takes him to retirement. So 4 years times 5, or 4 times 6, it's going to take that $2 million, that $22 million down to 18. No. Yeah. And then all of a sudden, at $18 million, you can add two $9 million forwards to add offense to your lineup and still keep John Tavares as your third line center. I think it's going to be ridiculous what the Leafs are going to do next year. I'm really excited for it. I'm happy that they got their defense situation figured out and they got their goaltending situation figured out. And now they just need to focus on offense, which they will do this year and next year because they actually have cap space going into the season. That a cap space is going to accrue, and then at the trade deadline they're going to use it to make some acquisitions. And then come the off season, and the cap space opens up, and everyone's signed and their back end is taken care of. The world is your oyster, my friend. But I mean, at the end of the day, these are my opinions. I'm not sure exactly what's going to happen, but this is the way I see it playing out. But you guys tell me, right? You guys agree? Like and subscribe. But let me know your opinions. Let's go back and forth. Let's talk about it on Facebook, on Twitter, on YouTube. I think it's going to be a very interesting year for the Leafs. But yeah, we got less than 90 days to hockey, and the summer, we still got a little bit of summer left, so enjoy yourselves. And this was episode 1 of season 5, and there's definitely more to come before the season starts. Appreciate you guys tuning in. Thank you so much. See you soon.